Anyone that tells you you're not going to get objections in 100% of the deals that you face is completely full of shit. I've been in this game for 15 years, both as an individual contributor and scaled numerous sales organizations. And I've trained hundreds, if not thousands, of sales reps specifically in the software tech sector. I've seen everything under the sun when it comes to deal cycles, the good, the bad, the ugly, what works and what doesn't. So objections are going to happen, but what you need to do is you need to be prepared for them. And that's what this video is going to help you do. What I'm going to walk you through is the 5 common mistakes made by most reps that you might be making right now to give you insight into the 5 types of objections that you're going to face every day that you can properly prepare. And number 3, walk you through the 8-step process that I've developed over the last decade to help you methodically overcome any objection that you face. So let's get right into it with the mistakes made by reps. So number 1, not fully listening to actually being what's being put in front of them. Believe it or not, this is big. We got to hear them, and I'll explain what I mean in a minute. Number 2, assuming that an objection automatically means you need a discount. If you're doing that, you're devaluing both your solution and yourself, and you're leaving money on the table. Stop doing that. Number 3, not being prepared for every type of objection that you're going to face. I'm going to give you the types of objection in a second, as well as how to prepare for them. But just because you don't overcome an objection doesn't mean it can't be overcome. It just means there's probably room for improvement of how you could have better prepared for that situation. Number 4, taking objections personally. They're not trying to attack you. They're just trying to understand if it's the best solution for their needs. Don't take it personally. And last but not least, not acting with integrity. This is bad for your deals, bad for your reputation, more importantly, bad for your soul. Don't do that. Be honest about what your solution can and can't do, and that's what's going to set you up for success, both near and long term. So now that we've talked about mistakes, what are the types of objections and how to think about overcoming them before getting into the 8-step process? So number 1 is price. Cost is only an issue in the absence of value. So if someone's got a concern about the cost or the investment, what they're essentially translating to you is, I don't see the value in your solution. So I want you to take the price objection and turn it into a value conversation. Because if you're going to give $1 million in value to them, they may not see that. They may see it as, well, based on what our understanding is, we only see $200,000 of impact. So you got to work on that so that the value becomes so high that the price becomes a non-issue. So turning price conversations into value conversations, and that's how you work to overcome them. Number 2 is fit. Can you physically or technically deliver on what they're looking for with your solution? Now, there's going to be situations where you can't. This is where you need to act with integrity and be transparent around what your solution can and can't do so that they can make an educated decision for themselves. And if that's the case, that's the right thing to do. But if there is instances where you know you can deliver against their needs and give them what they're looking for to solve their problems, help their business, all there is an education gap on the knowledge. So identify the gaps in knowledge that they have by exploring the fit knowledge gap. And then what you do is you work to address that so they can feel comfortable moving forward. After you discuss fit, you have to make sure that you're clear on who you're talking to and what their level of authority is. If you ever run into deals where they say, this sounds great, I need to think about it, or I need to talk to my partner, or I need to talk to the other stakeholders in the evaluation, this is where you have to get clear on who the different stakeholders are, what their level of authority is, and what are they responsible for. If you're running very complex deals, it's not uncommon for there to be a half dozen to a dozen stakeholders in the evaluation process. But they're going to have different types of roles. For example, one person's going to be exclusively responsible for getting clear on whether or not the fit is there. Another person's going to be specifically responsible for identifying whether or not the business case is there. Another person's going to be ultimately responsible for making sure the project stays on track and everyone's coordinated. Everyone's got different roles in the evaluation. So get clear on the different roles and the level of authority so that you can align with them going forward. After authority, think about timing. Now, timing is simply when you think that the solution is a fit, and they even say the solution is a fit, but there's other projects or priorities that are higher on the totem pole. So what this actually means, this is a value gap. Because let's think about it logically. If project A delivers $1 million in value and project B delivers $5 million in value, you're going to prioritize project B over project A. Even if project A we've been talking about for a couple of years, and project B just came on our radar. As a business, they're going to focus on the highest leverage projects to unlock impact for the business. So usually this is where you got to go back to the drawing board and identify the other projects on their plate, identify the impact of those projects, and then also dig into the impact that your project has, because they might only be seeing it as an isolated value impact, where one of the keys to getting your project at the top of the food chain for them is helping them understand the broader impact of your solution. And that's going to help move it up the ranks to help address the timing concern. Then next, this was made famous by Jeb Blount. Great guy, look him up. Is the concept of reflex objections. Reflex objections are simply knee-jerk reactions. What that means is people have been trained for years, if not decades, dealing with terrible salespeople that are trying to sell them. You work in sales. I'd be willing to bet that you hate feeling sold. No one likes that feeling. So because of that feeling that people are used to getting every time they interact with a salesperson, they're going to have a defense mechanism in place. That's what a reflex objection is. So don't take it personally. They've just been burned in the past and you have to work to overcome that. So now that we've talked about what to prepare for, now how do we think about methodically addressing the objections? And I've developed this over the last decade or so of training and coaching hundreds of sales reps, because I wanted to have it where it's both tactical, but also strategic, so that you could think about how to apply this in your everyday conversations right after watching this. So number one, hear them. Sounds simple, but first thing that's overlooked by most sales reps. Don't just listen to what they say. I want you to pay attention to their tonality, their body language. Some of the things that get communicated are nonverbal. So look at how they're communicating it and not just the words that they use, because that's going to help you get a sense of the severity of the objection. Once you hear them, acknowledge them. I'm sure you've vent to people in your personal or professional life. How would it make you feel if you say, man, I really am frustrated with X, Y, Z, and they say, okay, moving on. It wouldn't feel good. You wouldn't feel heard. Acknowledge them. Communicate that you hear them and you understand where they're coming from, because you're a human being, as are they. And that's going to help disarm them in the situation. Next is explore. The first objection is rarely the only objection, nor is it the real objection. So don't jump into responding mode or getting defensive. Just take a step back and ask open-ended questions and flesh this out. The goal is to get all the cards out on the table before you work to overcome them. So this is exploring, and this is big. And then once you explore them, you isolate them. Just as I talked about earlier with the timing. There's different priorities, there's different projects. So you need to work with them to prioritize which objections are the biggest objections. There's going to be objections that are going to be complete deal breakers. There's going to be objections that are nice to have. Help work with them and partner with them to stack rank the severity of the objections and then tackle them one by one after you isolate them. And then once you do that, speaking of tackling them, this is where you respond. Based on your knowledge, your information, what that you've learned, whether it's a knowledge gap, whether it's a value gap, whether it's an authority misalignment, whether it's a reflex objection, whatever it is, this is your opportunity to respond, whether it's through asking questions, educating them with just data points, in fact, whatever it is, this is your opportunity to overcome that and give them the answers that they need so that they feel comfortable moving forward. But the last thing I want you to do is assume that you've addressed their objection. Most sales reps, this is a big mistake they make. They respond to an objection and then they move on without ever taking a step back and giving the prospect or customer space to communicate whether or not they feel comfortable moving on. So take a step back and specifically ask, based on what I just shared with you, does that address your concern? Can we move on to the next item, or would you like to discuss this further? I want to make sure you're 100% comfortable. Get black and white confirmation for them before moving on. And then once you move on, you're going to repeat the same process, work down the list, and then once you work through everything, then you're going to work to close them. Whether that's getting a deal across the finish line, or that's getting the next step of the process in the motion. I hope this is helpful. My name is Justin J. Johnson, founder and creator of the beautiful Savage Sales Academy. I want you to use this. I want you to implement it. I want you to burn it down and make a bunch of money. I'll see you in the next video.